everyone. My name is Nichelle Hull, and I'm the host of Washoe County, Nevada Republican podcast. This is our premiere episode, so we're debuting our podcast today, and therefore I want to share a teeny bit about me before we jump into today's episode. So I have lived in the Reno area for about 14 years and have always worked in the social services or human services sector. Being politically conservative, I've recently had the opportunity to invest more time into, civic duties and civic discourse. So I sort of raised my hand to do this podcast and just share information. Essentially, the purpose of our podcast is to inform our citizens and our voters about issues that affect our community and things that we care about. So with that, today's episode is the first in a series of podcasts that we're going to use to inform our citizens about the state of education in Nevada. We are honored to have three guests today who are going to help us with that conversation and describe some of the current events that are happening. And so today's episode is going to drill down on essentially this question. Keep this question in your mind as you're listening to everybody. Who is in charge of our children's education? Is it the parent? Is it the principal? Is it a school board? Or is it that parent who is ultimately responsible for the care and the protection of a child while they're at school, right? So we know that teachers care for our kids, teach them. We have people that are protecting the children while they're at school. But ultimately, we believe that the parent is the one who must safeguard and elevate a child's education and do what's necessary to make sure their kids are getting a good education. Okay. In recent years, this idea is becoming increasingly murky because we have some things going on in the school district that are challenging that parental role. And so we want to just get that information out. So there'll be some terms today that many of our viewers or followers have heard, and then there'll be some terms that maybe some folks are new to. So we hope to define some terms as we approach some questions today. So to further introduce this topic, I want to let viewers know that it's been reported in our county, Washoe County, that K through 12 student enrollment is down between 10 and 25%, depending upon the school here in Washoe County. So those numbers are compared to pre-pandemic numbers, 2019. So that's a drastic drop in education. And this is what we're talking about today. Parents are deciding to remove their kids from the school district. And we want to know why. Why is that happening? So with that, our first guest, we're so honored to have. Her name is Beverly Stengham, and she is very familiar with the topic today. She is going to be sharing with us the term CRT and how it is being taught in our school system. So I know that Beverly arrived in Reno a few years ago to retire and then became very involved with the Republican Women of Reno and their education brigade or committee. You could use those two terms. And so she is going to share a little bit with us about some information that she saw on a Washoe County School District website regarding this word CRT. Welcome, Ms. Beverly.
Thank you for having me, Nichelle.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Yeah, so you saw a survey on the Washoe County School District website, and it was mentioning terms like racism, CRT, implicit bias. What can you kind of summarize that as and share a little bit of what that meant?
What happened was over a year ago, the Washoe County School District placed a survey on their website encouraging the community to respond to their proposal of a brand new program called Social Justice for kindergarten through 5th grade. Now, we're pretty sure that this is already being taught in 6th grade and up, but this was a brand new proposal for K through 5. And they had links to some of the programs, modules, and curriculum. And so we were all alerted to this survey, and we were alerted to the program samples. So I, along with everyone else, went ahead and clicked on the links and read the some of the curriculum. For kindergartens, they had it for each grade level, samples of what they would be teaching via this social justice program. And we were pretty horrified at what we read for little kids to learn about white privilege, implicit bias, systemic racism, oppressors and oppressed. And they really focus on equity versus equality. There's a huge difference between equity and equality. I, along with many others of us, we're all for equality. The Martin Luther King Jr. definition of equality, equality for all people, regardless of your skin color. But equity is about equal outcomes, regardless of the amount of effort that someone puts into an end goal. So equity is raising everybody up to the same level. Everyone gets the same prize, no matter what level of effort. But so that these were the things that are being proposed in this social justice program. In addition, they had a story about how our American forefathers who wrote the Constitution were imperfect. They were slave owners. So 84% of the community responded negatively toward this proposed curriculum, social justice program, including myself. We all wrote in saying, no, we don't want this, 84% of us. So what they didn't really, they were surprised by that feedback. So instead of shutting the program down completely, what they did was they created a special task force to look into the social justice program. So this special task force is still ongoing. We're not sure what they're doing, but we are very sure that critical race theory, CRT stands for critical race theory, is being taught in all of our schools. It is true, there's not a class that is called critical race theory, no, but the subjects, the ideology is embedded in the programs that they are teaching our children. And in fact, we have lots of proof for this. In fact, the teachers are being trained. New teachers are required to take a training on these ideologies. So it is alive and well. Anyone that says critical race theory or CRT is not being taught in our schools is lying. So yes, it's very important that we teach history. It is important we teach about the awful scourge of slavery. But we need to teach all history, not just history that is focused on skin colors. And that is what critical race theory is about. It is about oppressors and oppressed. It is about victims. And it is all about based on skin color and ethnicity. We want to get away from that. We want to focus on education instead of indoctrination. But that is what our schools have become. They have become government schools that are propaganda focused on indoctrination, political indoctrination. The critical race theory is now having an agenda. So what we'd like to see is more patriotism being taught in our schools. We're a great country. We're still the greatest country in the world. Let's focus on all the history and all the greatness of our country. Let's bring back the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hear, hear. I understand what you're saying, Beverly, that, you know, our country may have started with some issues like slavery, but we have come from that place to do so much better. And we want to focus on teaching children our Constitution and how we have made huge strides to provide access to opportunity for everyone. We really want to not divide the races with CRT, which sounds pretty divisive, but to unify as Americans in that patriotic sense, that let's succeed together. Let's help each other succeed. Let's not go into the past, which is so long ago. So, all right, excellent. Well, I'm sorry to hear that the school board seemed to just plow through those survey results and continue on with CRT in the schools. Now, I know that a couple years ago, I asked an instructor at Washoe County if they were teaching CRT. And what she told me was, no, we do not teach that at our school. We just focus on social and emotional health of the children now. And I said, okay. And so when we hear the terms that you just mentioned, equity and diversity, these are terms that get sprinkled into this umbrella of CRT. And when we hear diversity, we might think, well, that sounds great. I mean, you know, we're a diverse population in the US. Let's all succeed together, no matter your racial background. But their diversity and their equity, not equality, but equity, have different meanings. And so there can be some confusion. So when this teacher said to me, oh no, we just focus on social and emotional health, what was she really telling me there? Does that term sound familiar with all these other terms?
Yes, absolutely, Michelle. You can ask any teacher, board member, principal, administrator at Washoe County School District, and they will all tell you the same thing. They are not teaching critical race theory. That is a bold-faced lie. And again, like I mentioned, there's not a class that is called critical race theory. The ideologies are buried and embedded within the social and emotional learning modules. That is a thing, SEL, social emotional learning. Washoe County is one of a very few number of school districts in the nation that are test cases for this company called CASEL, C-A-S-E-L. And this company provides social emotional learning modules. And these modules contain all these words that we're talking about: privilege, white privilege, implicit bias, oppressors oppress, systemic racism, equity, not equality. And these programs, you're not going to find critical race theory anywhere they don't use those words, but they use these other words that are all a part of the ideology of critical race theory. We have example after example of this. Anyone can go to the Washoe County School District website. I have it somewhere here. It is called washoeschools.net. Anyone can go there and look under the department tab, go to the equity and diversity link, and just look around, explore that website. You will see tons of critical race theory ideology. The resources, they have 12 books for children. They're all about skin color and even protesting, how to protest. So the school district website is chock full of these ideologies, how to train teachers, how to train children. It's everywhere. It's infiltrated the entire website, especially the diversity. It's called Equity and Diversity Department. You will be amazed. And they've got all kinds of things there.
You know, speaking to that, it's a significant bit of real estate on their website. And we're bringing up this topic today because we understand where Nevada ranks. And that's my next question to you, because we want to come from a place of raising our educational standing within the US. And really the United States educational standing is quite low. I think it's 27th in the world. So we have some work to do as a country, but for our audience, what can you share with us, Beverly, about the performance of Nevada schools compared to other states with regards to national educational ranking?
Well, I can share some very sad news with you, unfortunately. Washoe County schools rank at the bottom of the barrel across the nation. We are number 49 with ACT scores, high school ACT scores, number 49 in the nation. And on the Department of Education for Nevada, this is all public information. If anyone wants to go to the Nevada Department of Education, they can see a scorecard for every school district in our state. And Washoe County comes in, only 48% of our kids are proficient in English. Only 28% of our children are proficient in math. Only 19% of our children are proficient in science. And only 13% of our kids are college ready. Those are some very dismal statistics. And instead of focusing on the quality of education, our school district wants to focus on indoctrination, on political and sexual indoctrination of our kids.
So, you know, being 49th, I know I moved here in around 2008, and at the time we were at about 50th. I believe we were 50th that year, but I could be wrong. But we were 49th, 48, 50, somewhere down there. And so nothing has really improved. So
No.
even though we've introduced social emotional learning, is what we're calling CRT now, it has not made any improvement in the academic performance.
That is correct. That is correct. The Battle-Born Moms for Education have done a fantastic white paper where they have explored and investigated critical race theory in the form of social emotional learning. And they've got all the statistics that show that there has been no improvement in test scores or learning with this introduction of social emotional learning, which has been going on for years. But however, for the last 10 years, since Angie Taylor, the board president, has been on the board, our scores have steadily declined. They have declined.
So then, if that's the case, what type of curriculum should our schools be implementing or maybe returning to instead of distracting the kids with CRT and gender curriculum, which we're going to talk about next? Instead of that distraction and that emphasis, what kind of curriculum should we be focusing on?
Well, I believe, like so many others of us, that we need to return to the basics: reading, writing, arithmetic, civics. We need to focus on academic excellence in those core subjects, maybe even technology. But certainly we need to get away from the politics and the sexual gender identity topics that have taken over our schools.
And, you know, I know that this is a topic that is really prevalent. I mean, it's in the atmosphere. I know that a lot of books are being written about this. We have our the Fox News Network, one of the anchors there. His name is Pete Hegseth, and he has recently written a book he partnered and authored a book called Battle for the American Mind. And you can pick that up at Costco. I read maybe 4 or 5 chapters of it. It was a very easy, fast read, what I did read. And he gets into this topic that we're addressing today, and he details classical education schools. And they are teaching what you're saying, Beverly. They completely leave out ideology, like the gender curriculum about people's genders and LGBTQ. They leave all that aside. They leave out this CRT, social emotional learning, and focus on core subjects. And so there are now 70,000 of these classical education schools within the US. And that's actually a very small amount, but it's been steadily growing for about the last 10 years is what I think I read in his book. And so I think that that's great. Now, if a family tries to talk to their school board or tries to approach the school district and like the experience you had with that survey, they don't feel like they're getting anywhere with the district, what kind of options do they have?
Well, what we tell people, what we advise is that they need to pull their children out and homeschool their own children, which is a lot easier than people think.
Mhm.
Or they can create or join a pod where you have maybe 6 to 10 kids in the same neighborhood join in, and the families share the cost of hiring a teacher. Or you can find a school that is a private education association that is not beholden to taxpayer money and is not beholden to government requirements teaching this indoctrination. So there are several options. We know a number of families who are very successful at homeschooling. And like I mentioned, it's a lot easier than people think. And the kids that I know that have been homeschooled are heads and shoulders smarter than the government schooled children that I know, because they're not wasting time learning about what, pronoun to use. They're focused on core subjects. Their parents and families take them on field trips, and they're not regulated to mindless kind of learning topics. They can focus on the core subjects and the important subjects.
All right, excellent. Well, obviously, we need to do that because our scores are year after year after year abysmal. That term that you used, it's almost like a collapse of our educational system, where our focus isn't in excellence of academics anymore. It's on these other peripheral items, ideologies, sets of ideas that have nothing to do with academics. These ideas are items that I think most parents would say that has to do with the home. That has to do with my parenting my child. If my child has issues with growing up, maybe they're in a tomboy phase or they're in some kind of phase, that's something I want to talk to my child about. I don't want the school having that kind of role. So that's excellent. Well, thank you so much for all of your thoughtful answers today. We will definitely include the resource that you mentioned about Battle-Born Mothers for Education when we post this material. Is there any other resource that you would put out to viewers if they're interested in maybe looking into homeschooling or finding a group that's already existing that they could take their kids to and maybe just support? Maybe they can't teach it because they work 2 jobs or whatnot, and they couldn't really see themselves. Maybe one day they could, but right now, just walking away from Washoe County is a lot, and they just want to find out where could they pull their kid out of and put into. Is there a resource?
Well, right now we're in the process of creating a place where we can put all this great information that we have in one place. So for now, I would encourage people to reach out to me. I can send them links. I can send them resources, names, parents that have actually done the homeschooling, and how to pull your child out. What are the forms you need to do it? So for right now, it's just my email, bev.stenjum@gmail.com. And I'd love to talk to anyone who has any questions.
Excellent.
Thank you for this opportunity, Nichelle.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so I'm just going to put that out there. It's bev.stenjum@gmail.com. Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Beverly.
You're welcome.
All right. And so we're going to move on now to another guest. He is from the southern part of our state, and his name is Timothy Underwood. And he is a grandfather. He is a Navy veteran, a longtime Las Vegas resident. And he spent pretty much all of his K through 12 education in the Las Vegas schools, the Clark County School District, to be exact. He also did some good work with the Nevada Concerned Citizens, writing letters to his newspaper and so on. And so we're very pleased to have Tim Underwood with us today. Welcome, Tim.
Hi, very glad to be here.
Wonderful. We're glad to have you. So, Tim, when you heard the news that gender ideology, or we could call it gender curriculum, was coming to Clark County schools, you decided to sort of dust off your activism hat, so to speak, put that back on and get involved. And why did you decide to get back involved with this topic?
Well, when I heard the news that CCSD was considering gender curriculum, I was worried my 13-year-old granddaughter would be forced to undress in front of naked boys. I've been kind of hearing about across the nation, different problems schools were having with trans boys being in girls' spaces and stuff. So I decided to go into action.
Right, because these spaces historically have been safe, segregated spaces, girls' bathrooms, girls' lockers, boys' bathrooms, boys' lockers. And we, if parents are listening to Tim and are thinking, what is he talking about? I just want to remind you, if you're in Washoe County, we have question 1 on our November 8th ballot, which is called the ERA. And it's an amendment which will allow males to compete in female sports. It will allow minor children to receive puberty blockers or gender change surgery, folks, without any kind of parental knowledge or consent.
That's a referendum question?
Question 1 on the November 2022 ballot. This is a proposed Nevada constitutional amendment. So this will be going out onto people's doors in terms of a flyer. In starting tomorrow, walkers are going to be hitting Washoe County up here, and they will have information about question 1 on the ballot. But back to
that question really is replacing parents with government. It's that stark of an issue.
It really is. It really is. And that's why I kind of framed it that way at the beginning of the podcast, because it's like we are not able to safeguard and protect our kids if the bathrooms are no longer going to be safe spaces. Like you said with your granddaughter, the locker room may no longer be a safe space. Tim was awesome enough to send me a document a few days ago. I want to just share a brief excerpt of that before I go to our next question. So I was sent a PDF of a document created May 11th, 2022. So just at the conclusion of the 21-22 school year. Okay. The document is titled Washoe Gender Plan Response. Washoe Gender Plan Response. And this was put out by Washoe County School District. I'm going to read section 5A under the heading of right to privacy, and it is subsection II. And it reads, quote, staff shall not disclose information that may reveal a student's transgender or gender nonconforming status to others, including parents or guardians or other staff members, unless there is a specific need to know. They are legally required to do so, or the student has authorized such disclosure. So exactly what you were just saying, Tim, is that the student is now somehow elevated over the authority level of the teacher and even the parent. So it used to be that if you were a teacher and you had a student that was struggling, maybe had some sort of maybe an emotional issue or something, and you were worried about your student, maybe it was their academic performance or something, you would call the parent out of concern and maybe have a parent-teacher conference, but you'd have a conversation out of concern for your student. But this document is telling the staff that they are not to disclose any kind of information like that to the parent, unless the child, this under 18 minor, says it's okay to do so.
Yeah. Complete usurpation of parental authority. Just a complete takeover.
Right, that's, I would say so. I mean, you know, the teacher, the principal, they are not the parents, they're not the caregivers, they're not the primary loved ones who are responsible for intervening on their child's behalf. And if a teacher knows that a child's having some kind of struggle with something so personal like that, but they who have that information don't give it to a parent, then I mean, that's
It's unforgivable.
right. So parents need to have any kind of information like that. Okay, Tim, so if you could provide some information to our followers regarding what you've learned about the performance of the Clark County students and anything that you know about Washoe County students that caused you some alarm and concern when you started really kind of digging into things for your granddaughter's sake.
I had known that Nevada education has been the bottom, 5 of all 50 states for several years. When I looked into the gender ideology being introduced into the classrooms, I realized this is probably why we're so low, because they're not putting education, the basics of education, as a priority. They've got these social experiments they want to do instead. And it's plainly obvious why our educational system in all the counties in Nevada, our bottom rung is the priorities are not on the students.
Okay, can you give us, like Bev did with CRT, can you give us some kind of definition, working definition of a school gender plan, or what gender curriculum means?
Yes, it's an ideology supposedly set on these standards. W Path is one of the organizations that they had used to set standards. But what I found out with a little bit of digging is there was no scientific studies being done to make those standards. There was actually no studies at all. It was merely assertions of people's opinions that formed the standards that W Path is. The whole world is using their transgender set of guidance, and losing my train of thought. They're very deceptive, and
well, with that gender plan, how has it become a part of our children's school day? I mean, you're saying it replaces the curriculum with gender focus. How many children are you aware of that have been placed into one of these gender plans? So the gender plan kind of instructs the child.
The gender plan is put together. I found out that there was nearly 200 school children here in Southern Nevada, Clark County School District, on these formal gender plans where they're being supported by school intervention to change their sex, if I want to go that far.
Okay.
And the gender curriculum is essentially teaching, even soon they're going to start having like first grade books that will tell the children, one day you might feel like a girl, another day you might feel like a boy, and that's okay, because you might be one or the other or something in between. And so it's there, it's present. Last year with the 194 school kids, that was CCSD's first year with this program. I just found out today, I got an email from them, and they're not going to give me this year's. gender marker, how many students they have for this year's enrollment. I suspect there's many, many more. I might have to sue them to get that information, but anyways, so a kid will identify as trans and then maybe tell the teacher, then the teacher is supposed to tell the administration, and they will bring in the parent. They'll bring in someone from that school's staff. They'll bring in like the family member can bring, the parent can bring like a pastor or someone along with them, and they have this meeting and they come up with a plan on how we're going to deal with their privacy, what bathrooms they're going to use, what locker rooms they're going to use, what the school actually can accommodate. You know, sometimes they're not able to build another bathroom or whatever. And but mainly it draws the child into an atmosphere with their peers where everyone is affirming that, oh yeah, you probably are trans, you know, and it's celebrated.
I see.
And that, it's almost like a drug for the kids to have that peer acceptance, you know.
So we feel like you're saying it's trending upward, that there are more and more kids following this trend or responding positively to this environment that's being created in the schools now that is pro transgender, pro LGBTQ, you know,
Right, and
the kids are receptive to it.
Right.
They get attention, and then other people get positively reaffirmed by affirming children. So even though we were saying before, in Washoe County, we have this document that says a teacher cannot tell a parent that their child is transitioning. This is the next level to this topic, where there is actually a plan, a school gender plan in place for those kids that do tell their parents, hey, I want to transition. I want to get on puberty blockers and I want a surgery, mom and dad.
Yeah, and what I fear is happening is most of the parents are probably like, what? You know, it's like, where did this come from? And the school district telling them the lie about suicidality will be increased if you don't intervene and help them transition to the opposite sex. Is a lie they're using. I think legally that the parent might not even be giving informed consent, because the consent that they're given to is based on lies they're being told by the district. So that's where I see a great violation also occurring.
I see what you're saying, right? Because we hear other statistics that say that there is an increase in depression and an increase in suicide for children who do go down the path of puberty blockers, you know, and truly start physically, you know, transitioning. That the increase is there for suicide and depression in those children, not the opposite. You're saying that's not a true statement that the counties are telling the parents.
Not at all. I wish I could cite those studies, but there's one that came out. One of the more recent studies suggests that suicidality among people in the transgender population peaks 7 years after they transition.
Okay.
So it's just, you know, because, you know, you're trying to live a life that's not based on reality. The older you get, the less like a woman you look or whatever, you know. But there's a key factor about this gender plan that I would like to emphasize. This is mainly a female teenage girl problem.
Okay.
They're getting the girls who would tend to be the cutters, the anorexia nervosa, you know, bulimics, and girls on the spectrum are feeling this discomfort. You know, most every girl feels, you know, the teenage body discomfort as
sure, of course.
Nowadays, kids are seeing porn and they're, I don't want to do that. Oh my God, you know, and
right.
There's this great anxiety about entering puberty, and these radicals who are involved in spreading this stuff are taking advantage of that. And so we have 193 kids in their gender plans. 35 are boys. That kind of fits the normal statistic that the DSM-5 says. And for girls, there should only be 9 or 10, but we have 153 girls. So what it is actually is a social contagion. Abigail Schreier, who wrote Irreversible Damage, talks about it. 15 years ago, gender dysphoria was almost exclusively a male problem. And then with this new stuff happening, they're, cherry picking these vulnerable girls and introducing them to this idea that your life will be so much better if you take hormones and join the other girls and you'll be accepted by everybody. And
correct.
Yeah.
Right. So we definitely need to be on our toes with our girls, especially if they, maybe if they, like you said, maybe some of them are on the spectrum, or maybe they struggle a little bit socially. Maybe they don't feel like they belong that well, struggle with confidence. That's the time when we really want to, be watchful, talk to our kids, intervene, and just do stuff with your kids. Just try to bike ride or play board games, or engage them with other social support networks like a youth group, or like a debate.
Get them off social media.
And social media can really
take their phone away.
Yeah, social media can get some negative messages.
That's a big influence on it. It's the social media, it's the academics talking about it. And then they see it in school, they see it in the library books, and it all gets going in their heads, and then they get sucked into this. And they're
right. And I too have noticed a lot more messaging and virtue signaling going on commercials for corporations, products that are being sold.
I couldn't believe they did that.
So there's a lot of bombardment of this transgender messaging going on.
And then with our president, saying the same message and having his, whatever that guy is a woman in his uniform, saying gender affirming care is life-saving care. It's the biggest lie in the world. But they're saying it too. So it's all these influences. And
all right. Well,
a lot of us are,
I'm sorry, what was that?
A lot of us get upset about what's going on nationally and, with politics and what's going on over there. Oh, we got to change it. But all politics is local. And so we can do all that big fight right here in our school districts. It's a major political issue that we're seeing playing out in our own backyards, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Excellent. Okay, for sure. Well, thank you for being so vigilant and finding all this information and sending it out to folks. Timothy has an outlet called For the Children. If you just spell out each of those words, no spaces, For the Children of CCSD, Clark County School District, .substack.com. And he is great. He really informs us of what's going on in Clark County and Washoe County as well.
I have a bonus too. I forgot that I had this in my records, but I found 3 contracts with Panorama Education and Washoe County for 2019, 2020, and 2021. They were $49,000 a piece. So they've been in your district mapping all the kids' minds out, and everything with these survey questions that they use to manipulate them towards CRT and towards gender ideology and stuff.
Okay, so Panorama Education. Panorama.
Yeah, so I emailed the 3 copies to you. And I sent also, Christopher Rufo is the premier journalist in America on this. He's the one who broke open the critical race theory story. He's the first one. Now he's working on the gender ideology too. So I sent you a link to, he just produced a guideline for parents, what to do about this crazy indoctrination in schools. So hopefully that benefits.
Okay. Well, I'll look into that, and maybe we can put some of that information out on this post, or we might have Timothy back.
Put it on my Substack too.
Okay, yeah. On your Substack.
Yeah, we can get that out for the Washoe County parents.
We'll put that out for folks. So thank you so much again, Timothy. We appreciate you giving your time to us. Have a good day. Okay. All right. So we're going to turn now to another guest, and her name is Miss Rebecca Wood. She is the Nevada State Director for an organization called American Majority. And Rebecca is very familiar with the issues of CRT and the gender curriculum that are causing so many parents to remove their children from government schools. These are some of the big reasons that parents are pulling their kids out. Parents are looking for alternatives which teach the classics and leave out these ideologies that we've mentioned, which can truly cause harm to our kiddos. And so we want to welcome Rebecca to the podcast. It's great to have you, Miss Rebecca. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So if you could please just start out maybe fleshing out what American Majority is. The website is amazing, and I was new to that website. So maybe you can share a little bit of what it is that you do.
Okay. American Majority is new to Nevada, but they're not new to the country. They were founded in 2008 by Ned Ryan, and they go into states that to help them basically go red. But American Majority, what we do is we're nonpartisan. We're a 501c3, so we're a conservative nonpartisan. Does that make sense? So we go out and we do trainings to educate people on what's going on in their state. And because of the fact that we are a 501c3, it opens up so many doors, because we can go into places and they're like, oh, well, you're not going to be mean to me or this to me or that to me. And we educate them on the facts, what's happening, because you would be surprised. There are so many left-leaning parents. They don't want their children indoctrinated with CRT. They don't want gender ideology pushed on their children. They don't. They want their job as a parent. And honestly, that's not a left or right issue. That's a parent issue. And so that's one of the things I found, is that because of what American Majority does, we're able to reach out to a lot of people and really educate them on what's going on. We do all sorts of trainings, everything from faith and politics to voter poll watching, poll working, election integrity. Yes. And there's just a lot of trainings. The school board training and holding your elected officials accountable, and election officials and faith and politics are some of my personal favorites, because our children are so important. They're the future. And why school board is at the bottom of the list when we vote is beyond comprehension. It should be at the top, because they're the ones who are guiding and shaping the kids through education. And they were talking earlier about CRT not being taught. Well, it's not taught as CRT, but I had one of the people in Mesquite, her son was in a math class, and this is, I'll just read this real quick if you want.
Please. And
he was given a question. Okay, it said, so the students are directed to this is high school math, to calculate the marginal distribution by force level and race. This is math. It then provided a chart of the stops, and they were broken down by race: Black, Hispanic, white, and by the level of force that was used in those. Push to the wall, ground, handcuffs drawn, point weapon, pepper spray, or baton. See, that's not a math problem. That's indoctrination. That's CRT. That's how they are getting our kids. Can you imagine if the situation was turned around and they got this math problem? The city of Baltimore is 68% Black, 68% of its police officers are Black, and 58% of its firefighters are Black. 86% of the public school students are Black, 72% of the teachers are Black, 90% of the city council members are Black. The mayor is Black, the chief of police is Black, and 54% of the population is on welfare. Calculate the marginal distribution of blame for poverty and crime in Baltimore between white and Black people. So if they had gotten that problem heads would have exploded on the left. But they're getting into the CRT, they're wiggling it in through math problems, through an English story, through, I have a friend who's a third grade teacher. As far now, this isn't CRT, this is goes on to gender, but she was told to be careful how she taught the pronouns, general English pronouns. Well, he, she, it, they. She said it was so frustrating. I was told I could get into a lot of trouble if I wasn't careful with that. And so this really, I have three grandchildren here in Nevada, and 2 of them are in school already. And it's just scary what our kids are learning, and the parents, they have to be involved.
For sure, and because it sounds like what you're saying is that, it's insidious. It's maybe 3 or 4 math problems on an exam that are accentuating and focusing a child's attention on disparity of race, disparity of treatment based on race, instead of math.
Right.
Instead of, how many apples went in this carton? What was the distribution of, oranges in this cart? I mean, I'm pulling terms out of the air,
Right.
obviously, but it's so true. It's like the example with Baltimore. It's so obvious when you pick that example, because clearly, why would anybody focus the whole essence of that problem around race?
Right.
And who was injured based on race? Then the whole point of the question isn't math, it's teaching you something dark about race and how people are treated in our country. And that is painting a picture that is not necessarily true. It's not true to whitewash everything as just this horrible race war that we're in. That is what the media and this CRT wants to paint, wants to divide. It sounds like they want the focus on racial division instead of the opposite of that. Because
exactly.
if things were so bad here, why would we have African-American wealthy people and so many Hispanic entrepreneurs and politicians who are of every color? Increasingly we're seeing more diversity in the folks that hold office. So it's not a true statement to paint the picture like that and have kids focus on that instead of focusing on computations and and other things like that. And I'm so glad, thank you for bringing up the fact that this really isn't a partisan issue. And when people sigh a breath of relief that you're a 501c3, this is not a Republican, Democrat, this is a parent issue.
It's true. And they don't the power of the next generation. And parents are upset. They, going to school and their child can have surgery without them knowing. Oh, but don't give them an aspirin if they have a headache, or Tylenol. They can't do that. So I think, they're just taking away the parents' control, and parents on both sides, they want to parent their kids.
Absolutely. So American Majority is a resource to educate folks out there as to what is going on in their Nevada school. And then it also helps you have tools on, like, for instance, how to deal with a principal or a school board.
We do. We have trainings that we're going to be putting out after the election on how to hold your elected officials accountable. Okay. Do you want to run for office? We have trainings on helping them run for office. We have trainings, and that includes school board, because people don't realize how important the school board is. They're all about, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that. That's great. But if you want to make a difference in the future, get involved with the school board, run for school board. And so we offer trainings on how to do those things and how to be successful.
Certainly, yes, because a lot of times, and I've been guilty of this in the past, I admit it, I have not known who the school board people were other than seeing their signs on the side of the road. I didn't take the time to understand who these individuals were and their platform and their principles and what they were running. on. And so I didn't always vote, or I just voted completely ignorant, I'll
Right.
admit that. So, it's a good call to action for all of us to really pay attention to the school board races. We have in Washoe County 3 folks who are anti-CRT, anti-gender curriculum in the school. We have Graham Reed running for at-large school board candidate. Then we have Melanie Sutton, and the other district is Colleen. I'm spacing her last name right now. It'll come to me, but
It will.
anyways, whoops. But sorry, Colleen. But Colleen and those folks are good opposition to what's currently on the board, because what's currently on the board, with the exception of a person named Jeff Church, is all about these things. And I know I've heard from a lot of parents that are on different sides of the aisle. I have some independents and some libertarians that attend these school board meetings, and they have just, like Beverly, our first guest, just felt ignored and put upon. They feel that the school board treats them like they are just a pain. And
the squeaky wheel gets grease. So they need to continue going, and that's the thing. I get asked a lot, well, what can we do? Well, if you're not ready to run for school board, go to the meetings, get on the agenda. If not, talk to them when they have their open time, where open mic, but be respectful, be concise, write it out, be informed. Don't go in there and go screaming and yelling and go crazy, because they're not going to listen. And that's the thing, is we want to be heard. And by going in there and being concise and having our papers with us, and our people are more apt to listen than if you go in screaming and yelling and calling names. And I encourage parents all the time, go to the school board meetings, go to the school board meetings.
I have something here. It's probably like a document that you would put out, and I referenced it before, but Graham Reed, I know, had quite a bit to do with creating this document, and it's called Ugly Facts About Washoe County School District, and it's pretty bad. This talks about the focus of, instead of teaching US history, teaching Black Lives Matters, teaching CRT. It just gets into a lot of things that are currently going on with our school district. It also lists all the names of the school board members who are the incumbents right now that we're having these difficult times under. Angie Taylor, Diane Nicolette, Ellen Minetto, Joseph Rodriguez, Elizabeth Smith, and Adam Mayberry. These are the incumbents that we are number 49 under. So
And they support
that need to be
CRT.
voted out.
Right. And they support CRT and gender program.
And gender programs. So
See, there's no reason we should be 49th. None. No reason.
Year after year after year. And
Mismanagement of funds, people not paying attention, seeing how it's going, putting the money into CRT and gender rather than schooling. Like Bev said earlier, it needs to go back to the basics. We need to get our kids educated and reading, writing, math, history, civics. We have to go back to the basics, and we're going off on all these different tangents of what's popular.
right. And I know that there are 2 school board members who are involved outside of the school district. They derive income from diversity, equity, and inclusion. In other words, CRT. Angela Taylor earns income by owning and operating a critical race theory training company. I don't have the name of it. But also this document says that Elizabeth Smith is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, CRT, director for a local company called International Game Technology. And so she earns her living from critical race theory, and yet we're to believe what they tell us when they say we don't teach critical race theory, but you have 2 school board members who make income teaching that. And so
they don't teach it, they sneak it in there, like in the math and English and history.
Something needs to change. If Washoe County School District budget is $1.3+ billion, We have a massive budget. It's the biggest budget item there is in our county. It dwarfs every other category, such as law enforcement, or every category is dwarfed by 1.3 plus billion. And yet we're 49
Right.
again and again and again.
1.3 plus billion. And there's how many students in Washoe County?
67,000 there were, but
See, you divide that up. How much is that per student? And it's shocking,
a lot. Yeah.
right? So why aren't they learning? Why aren't they getting the supplies they need? Why aren't the teachers getting what they need? The teachers, a lot of them are being pushed into this. It's not their choice. They don't want to go this route.
We hope to have a teacher on one of our next episodes who had felt that she needed to resign from her teaching position due to the fact that she was so uncomfortable teaching SHARE, which is the sexual education program, to her third graders. And she felt it was entirely inappropriate. And so she ended up leaving her profession over it. And we know that Washoe County has so many openings for teachers. And so it makes you wonder, well, what's happening to the teachers that we had? Why are there all these openings, especially now that we know that enrollment is down? So it's not as though enrollment is up and we're filling our classrooms and we're having to build so many more schools because there's so many more kids and we need all these teachers. No, the enrollment is down. And so these must be replacement slots a lot.
Right.
Where are the teachers going and why are they leaving?
I know 2 teachers that left because of the gender and the CRT. And then they just left. They're going, let me figure how to put this. I have a family member who goes to school, who goes to a private in-home school, and the teacher has 4 or 5 kids, and that's how they're learning. And so I think some of the teachers are catching on and they're doing this, which is great.
So we have teachers that are catching on that. Number one, what you're saying is that the teacher is uncomfortable pushing these ideologies and things on the children.
Exactly.
They leave, and then they know that there's pod schools out there, which are just groups of families trying to do homeschooling together.
Right.
And these families need help. They may not be able to do the homeschool all by themselves, so they will compensate a professional teacher to run their pod.
The parents do, yes.
So the parents pay for a teacher to run their pod school.
Right.
They get a professional. They have to compensate that person. And so some of these teachers are leaving Washoe County and other counties and going to teach in pods. So if you're interested in a pod, and again, you're a parent that says, oh boy, I'm really worried about what is being taught in the classroom. I want to find out more. I want to find out what's being taught. And then you find out, oh gosh, this is all happening in my child's classroom. Do you have any resources to share with folks on how to get started pulling their kids out and putting them in a pod or homeschooling?
I can send you some.
Okay.
I can send you some. I can. The hardest thing about the pod schooling is that it's very kept down low because people are afraid of getting in trouble, even though it's totally legal, totally legit. It's all across the board, like ours is registered, everything, but they're afraid. And so I would just, if people are interested in that, they need to listen close. And I know a lot of schools aren't allowing volunteers in the classroom, but even if you have to go through a background check, volunteer in your child's classroom, go through that background check, go through the steps, do what you need to do. And if you can't find one of these pods or schools like that, get involved as much as you can. There are several online schools that have curriculum where they can interact with the teacher online and they can homeschool. And then there are homeschool groups that support all these students and go on field trips and do things like that. When my kids were growing up, my kids are in their 30s now, but the trend was not there to homeschool, and I homeschooled mine anyway, and I got so much flack, and I'm glad to see the trend changing because no one knows your kids better than you do. No one knows what they're capable of and how to get them to do it. And that with our schools so overcrowded right now, if you have 40 kids in your classroom, and you have one that's a spatial learner and one that's a tactile learner and all these different ways of learning, you don't have time to teach them. So I
Yes.
think it's important that we start, giving our teachers a little bit more, but they're going to keep leaving, and the numbers are going to keep dropping, because of the CRT and the gender.
Mhm, mhm. I want to give folks one more resource, a website called parentsdefendingeducation.org. That's another up to the minute resource on giving folks tools. And like you said, Rebecca, we don't always think of online learning because some kids don't do well with online learning, your
Right.
kinesthetic learners and so forth, but some do. And so depending upon where your kiddo is at, that might work for one of your children and you let them do
Right.
the online learning. And then another one, you treat a little bit differently. You might need to bring family into the situation, but they say homeschooling is not as difficult as it once was because it's been so fleshed out over the years that there's whole curriculum companies, and you can, kind of audit which curriculum you like, and you can even do multiple companies if you want. If you have one kiddo that would really thrive under this curriculum and another kiddo that would thrive under this one.
Right.
And so that's what's so great about plugging into a pod. And we did have the email. I'm going to put it out one more time. It's bev.stenehjem@gmail. That is our first guest, and she can help folks find a pod to get into.
And also look into charter schools. I know Clark County has several that don't do the gender or the CRT. They're harder to get into because there's a waiting list, but there's more than one option. There's charter schools, there's homeschools, there's the pods, there's team teaching with your friends, where you do 2 days and your friend does 2 days and you do what subjects you're gifted in, and they do the subjects they're gifted in. So there's a lot of good creative ways to handle those situations.
For sure. And I think a huge part, I know for me, it would be, I need support. I need somebody who's going to wrap around, what I'm doing. I can call them and say, hey, when I'm stuck.
Right.
So I know that those support structures are in place. And the first step is reaching out to a Bev, or just Googling homeschooling in your area. I know here in Washoe County, there's several websites that will pop up, and one of them is a list of pod schools. And you just call the contact to find out if that school has a spot. If it doesn't have a spot, then you might have to travel a little bit further out from your house to get into a pod school. But the other thought is we really want to expand this option to folks, because if they don't have a charter school and they want to go with a pod, find out what support you have. You might be able to just do this. Maybe you teach your kids at night.
Right.
You start school at 2 because you get off at 1:30, and so you just do 2 or 3 hours of school every day, and you can make it work. And
some of the online curriculum is not, it's where it's online and you're face to face with a teacher. Some of the schools do that. Other programs, they'll send you the books if your child's a book learner. And then if they're more kinesthetic, you're going to have to step in as the parent and develop that inside the curriculum. So there's so many different ones out there.
Right. It's really encouraging. It's really come far. It's not like homeschooling just hatched out of an egg yesterday.
Right.
It's been around for many, many years, and it's gotten much more organized to facilitate it for just your regular person who can teach their child. And if you can't teach your child geometry, there's someone else, like you said, a friend or who can.
Right.
So I think that's a really positive note to end on. I want this to be a positive program for parents that might be really apprehensive hearing all this, but you know what? There is hope. There are resources. You don't have to necessarily be out of the school district forever, but maybe while this stuff is going on in the school, and that's not the time to be there. And maybe there will be a day where you can come back to it,
and not to be afraid as parents, because they're the parent, it's their child, they make the decisions, no matter what anybody tells them.
Absolutely.
And they know in their heart, my biggest advice to parents all the time, especially new, trust your instincts. I don't care if the experts tell you something completely opposite. They know, your child. So trust your gut and listen and don't be afraid. It's not always, flowers and roses and, there are hard days, but that's life. There are hard days in life, but it's very rewarding. It's, and it's worth it.
It's worth it. It's worth it. I'll just finish on one little quick story. A family member of mine, her son was going to a really large high school here in Reno, and he was being taught a lot of the CRT, and it was making him angry. It was changing his mood, and it was stirring up all this angst toward adults, authority figure, and
Right.
it was trickling over into his family dynamic. And my relative was able to remove her son from the high school and put him in a private school. And she accessed some family resources and made things happen, and they were able to do that. Not everybody can go the private
Right.
route, but if you can, and a lot of these private schools offer scholarships, so
Right.
don't be shy about asking for a scholarship. That's why they're there. So
And it's okay if your child comes to you and they're like, I'm not comfortable in my body. You know what? Puberty is not comfortable. It's not.
it's not
There's
easy.
so much going on. And it's okay to converse with them about that and say, you know what? I get it. I was there. I'm sorry that but it will pass. And I think so many times our children are afraid to talk to us. And encourage your children to talk to you and ask them how they're feeling. And it's a struggle sometimes, especially with those preteens and teens, but keeping that dialogue open and telling them, look, I know this age is uncomfortable. It will pass, and encouraging them as they're going through this, no matter what school option they have.
Absolutely. And on the topic of positivity, always highlight, think of the things that are great about your kiddo and just highlight them to your child, because that will open your child up to trust you, to talk to you about something that maybe they wouldn't
Right.
have. But if
Right.
you give them compliments and love, many times they'll feel like it's safe to tell you something that has been on their heart. So let's just compliment our kids, and like you said, let them know we've been there. Things
And
get
it
better.
stinks. I agree with you. It's hard. And
Yeah.
it's harder now than when we were kids with the
is.
social media, and everything they do is blasted and everybody's opinion goes on. And I think it's much harder for our children now, much harder. And so I think that it's good to be there and encourage them.
Encourage them, and have that family night. We turn off our phones
Mhm.
and it's movie night, or it's pizza
Right.
and game night, and we are just going to look at each other in the face and think of something sweet to say to each other. And that's what we're going to do tonight.
And with teens and preteens, sometimes when you have to let them invite a friend, and that's okay too. If that's what it takes to get it to happen, do it. And just fun relationship building.
Yes, the more the merrier. It's all about relationships. That's the key indicator for happiness, is relationships.
Not changing your gender.
It's actually not changing your gender.
Yeah.
That's not really what science says. So,
Right.
okay. Well, thank you so much, Miss Rebecca, for coming on and sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. And we appreciate the hard work that you're doing, and training folks all over Nevada and outside of Nevada. And you're so busy. And so we appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And, we will schedule trainings with groups. If one of your groups would like to have a training or wants more information, we will schedule them for them. We'll talk to them about, what they need. We can customize a training. So they can just reach out to me online. My email is rebecca.wood@americanmajority.org. Or they can call me. My phone number is online as well, and reach out to our website, americanmajority.org, and touch Nevada. But it's rebeccawood@americanmajority.org. And I'll be happy to work with any groups or people and set up trainings and come and do them.
Excellent. I have a distant cousin in the Bay Area in California, and he got together with several friends, and they were kind of in the same geographical blocks areas,
Right.
and they formed their own school, and
That's
they
great.
did it quickly, very quickly. They pulled it together, and so that was just, I think, 4 families all within the same block or two, and they did it.
And Nevada's fairly easy to do that. Nevada is not some of these states that are, I mean, crazy. You can do it fairly easily here.
All right. Well, we appreciate you, and we look forward to getting some of these addresses out to everybody once we post this episode. And thank you so much, and have a good night, everybody. And just know there's hope, there's resources out there, and there is support for you if you decide that you do want to move your kids out of your school district.
It makes an impact. Have a great night.
Okay, thank you. You too.